Well guys, this is the 26-inch step-over version of the Philodo Falcon that I am now on. It feels quite a bit the same, yet quite different from the 24-inch version. Like for one, the brakes feel quite undersized now with these larger 26-inch wheels. 24-inch version, I thought the brakes were adequate. I thought they were good. I didn't feel the need to upgrade them. And this bike though, you really have to squeeze the levers. It's a lot more mass, a lot larger diameter tire, and 180 millimeter rotors just are not enough. This should have came with 203 rotors at least, in my opinion. Even down this little bit of a hill, I gotta squeeze them quite a bit. Now I took and I transferred over my BMX bars and my suspension package that I put on the 24-inch model. And I also transferred over the display that I did a factory reset on. But the weird thing is, let's see if it's accurate. Pull up a speedometer app here. See what it comes back with. So as you can see, 17, 18, and it's reading 14. It's kind of all over a little bit. Not a very good signal in here, but I'm going to say it's off, though, a little bit. The reason I say that is yesterday, my wife was on my old 24-inch that I set up for her now, and I was on this bike. And when we were in PAS 3, her bike said we were doing 24 miles an hour, and mine said we were doing 19 miles an hour, yet we were side by side the entire time. So something is not accurate. I believe this one's a little under. Hers might read a little over. I think between the two, maybe that's where we're getting our speed discrepancies. But the odd thing is, no matter what the display shows, the bikes were doing the same exact speed. I found that pretty interesting. As far as the fit and the size of this bike, it feels a lot like my Wired Freedom. It's the larger 19-inch frame, just like that bike, and the bigger wheels and tires. It feels just like my Freedom, except you still feel like you're sitting a little lower than on that bike. It still doesn't feel as tall, but it's the wheelbase, the reach, all that feels just like I'm on a Freedom, especially now that it's got the same handlebars and everything. Other notables is I did the gearing changes on this bike just like I did on the last one. I did the 52 tooth front double-sided chainring with the 1128 Drift Maniac rear cog set, and that makes it so that you can pedal this bike, I would say, comfortably up to 30 miles an hour, which I don't ride real fast anyways. So it worked out perfect. I've got the fork on this bike. I love it and I hate it at the same time. And I'll show you here when we do a little off-roading. I've got the pressure set way higher than they recommend. And it is great for the larger bumps and the larger hits, but it really doesn't have any small bump compliance to it. I took and I let all the air out of the fork. I had the fork off the bike, and with the compression at the softest setting and the rebound at the quickest setting, I could push down on the fork on the ground, and it felt just like the stock fork as far as I didn't feel any stiction to it. It didn't feel like it was a struggle to get the initial movement out of the fork. It felt every bit the same. But when it's on the bike, the pressure label on the fork says for a 220 pound rider, that's as high as the label goes. Keep in mind I'm 265. For a 220 pound rider, it says 90 to 110 psi. So I tried 110 psi. The fork will not rise back up again. Like if I compress it, even with the rebound at the quickest, compression at the lightest, if I compress that fork down, it comes up maybe a quarter of the way. So I started adding more pressure. I went in 10 pound increments until I got where the fork felt comfortable as far as the air spring goes for holding up the weight. And basically I have to be at 150 psi on this fork to get the sag set right. So I have about 30% sag on the fork, and it works good for the bigger hits. I don't bottom it out. I've got compression kicked up just a little bit. I've got rebound kicked up just a little bit to slow it down so it doesn't top off real quick. And it feels good over the rougher stuff. But when you get into the chatter bumps and things like that, the fork doesn't move. And you just feel it just through the handlebars. It just shakes the crap out of your arms. But to be fair, the majority of forks I've ridden, especially in the sub $200 price range, have all been the same. You either have a way too soft of a fork to the point where you blow right through the travel at every bump you hit, or you have a fork that's way too stiff and you don't get to use any of your travel. So at least with the air spring, I can get it where the travel works out okay. The compression and rebound are, I would say, mostly decent. And you could kind of play with air pressure. Like I could probably take some air out of the front tire. I'm running 18, both front and rear right now, stock tires. And I could probably get a little bit better small bump absorption just out of the tire. And that would help, but the trade-off would be that you're gonna have a lot more rolling resistance when you're on the hard pavement, and it will feel a little squirmy when you're riding on the roads. So everything's kind of a give and take. I'm kind of happy with where it's at right now. As far as power goes, I did notice that the 24-inch version accelerates harder than this bike does. And I mean, I expect that. I expect that, you know, the smaller diameter tire is not only lighter and less rotating mass farther out from the axle center point, but it's just the effective gear ratio, because I'm sure the motors are exactly the same. I don't think they re-geared the motors for the two different tire sizes, because it's only like an 8% difference between a 24 and a 26 effectively for rollout. So you're just going to get a little bit more of that. And you could say that the 26-inch version would get a higher top speed, but you're limited by horsepower. I mean, there's only so much power going to the motors, and eventually you're going to hit wind resistance. Yeah, if you're going down a hill on the throttle, you get a higher top speed with the 26-inch version. There's no getting around that. But as you can see, it accelerated pretty good there. Kick her up to 3. So it's more than capable. I'm happy overall with the bike. And I'm kind of glad I got to experience both the 24 and the 26-inch version. I think ultimately, I still say the 24-inch version is the one to buy. You get the benefits of the step through if you need it. The smaller frame feels, and the smaller wheels and tires together, the bike just feels a little bit more playful, a little bit more lively. The 26-inch version feels a little more planted. I feel a little bit more confident riding off-road. I don't feel cramped when I'm standing on this bike as much. It just, it's a good overall fit for me. Keep in mind I'm 6'3", 265 pounds, so I'm a larger rider. But I still was pretty comfortable on the 24-inch version. The only time I ever felt cramped on that bike was riding off-road standing up. I just felt like I was a little too far over the handlebars with that 17-inch frame. The tire size was never an issue. It was always the frame size, the reach. It just felt a little short. I believe the 24-inch you save just a little bit of weight because the bike's a little smaller and the wheels are a little smaller. I think your range is going to be a little bit better because it's going to be a little bit more efficient, being lighter and having the better gear ratio with the smaller tires. I just think the 24-inch version is pretty much all upsides. Huh, someone lost their propane tank. Interesting. But yeah, if I would say if there's one to buy, unless you're dead set on getting a step over version, whether you like the looks or you just want the larger bike, the step through just makes more sense. I think it's the better buy. But that said, they're very close. I don't think either one's a bad choice, and I think both of them are a better choice than my Freedom. Here is the 24-inch step through, my original bike. It's now set up in wife mode. So she's 5'2", so you can see the seat is down low, and she doesn't have room for a suspension seat post. But I did soften up the rear air shock. The other change I made for her is the handlebars. She likes to sit upright, so I did this style of a stem, and that way the handlebars can go more towards her, and she finds the bike to be really comfortable. Give you kind of a look at it here. I did change the tires out to a little bit more street-friendly tread, and we did a noseless saddle, pretty comfortable. Other changes I made to it is I added the mirror to it. We did these leather wrapped grips. They're actually really comfortable. And I changed out the twist throttles to ones without a key. You do have to cut, solder, and splice to make that work though. And when the 26-inch bike came in, I stole the fenders and the suspension and every part I could off of that bike so she could have as new of a bike as possible. Going over here to the new bike for me, the 26-inch step over version, you can see I did the suspension package that was on the 24-inch and the BMX bars that was also on the 24-inch. This one also got a throttle conversion to one without a key, and I changed out the rear shock because I blew the original one, changed out the pedals, changed out the cranks on both bikes to these that are 160 millimeter long instead of 170 to get a little bit more ground clearance. Also went to a noseless saddle, the same one as on the 24-inch. And an SR Suntour suspension seat post. New pedals. It's a 52 tooth chainring on both bikes. Drift Maniac 1128 rear freewheel on both bikes. So they both pedal well at speed. But once again, just to give you a look over of both bikes, you can see the size difference between the 24-inch version with the 17-inch frame. 26-inch version has the 19-inch frame. So there's your size comparison. My first ride with the Falcon, the 24-inch version, the speed control programming really threw me for a curveball because I'd never ridden anything like this where it's all speed based on your PAS levels. But now that I've got some time on it, I had 360 60 miles on the old bike, and now I'm at 26 miles, but probably more because the speedometer is not accurate. On this bike, I prefer this system. For what I do, like just for this, where I'm cruising into town on these country roads, I like how every speed is essentially like I turn the cruise control on. And it just maintains that speed, and it's easy. Yesterday, and the reason why I got my second one, so my wife was on the same bike as me, is when we rode together, we just were in the same PAS level, and we just rode the same speed all the time. So it was really easy to keep pace with her, and it just made riding enjoyable. However, if you're not riding with somebody on the same bike, like when she was riding her electric XP4, and she was all over the place on speed with having that torque sensor, and depending on how much she pedaled or if she used the throttle or what have you, it was so much work for me to match her speed all the time. I was either pedaling on and off, or I was using the throttle while I was pedaling to kind of hold a certain speed with her. It was horrible. It was not fun at all. And it didn't make riding with her enjoyable. So I'm gonna say, if you're gonna be riding all the time with other people and they're on different bikes and they ride at varying speeds all the time, then the Philodo tuning is not gonna work out well for you. You're not gonna enjoy it. Unless you're someone that just uses the throttle all the time, then you could just use the throttle to mitigate your speed. Then I would say you're probably not gonna be happy with it. And when I was riding with my buddy that has a wired cruiser, I had to work to match his speed, or else we were constantly pulling away from each other, and it took the fun out of it. But I don't ride a whole lot with other people, and most of my riding is just like what I'm doing now. So I actually have kind of fallen in love with this software tuning. The only thing I still complain about is it's way too soft of a start from a zero. So if I'm crossing a road, I'm trying to beat traffic, I have to really anticipate and get on the throttle way ahead of time to get going, or else it takes me forever to cross the road. And I think that is a safety concern. I think you should be able to adjust it more, and you should be able to get rid of some of that delay. You could twist the throttle and it's 5-8 seconds before you get going at a halfway decent speed to cross the road. And I just think that's still unacceptable. That's too much. Way too soft. If you're in dual motor, it helps. You get a little bit quicker acceleration. But it's one more thing you have to think about while you're trying to pay attention to traffic, while you're trying to cross the road or get out of somebody's way, is that, okay, it's gonna have a delay to it, so the car's still back there a little ways. Now is when I should get on the throttle so I can try to anticipate, so I'm already rolling when the car passes by. It's not good. It's not a good thing. And that really now is the only gripe I'm down to with this bike, as far as the 24-inch goes. The 26-inch, I'm going to throw in brake rotors being undersized. They work. They will bring you to a stop, but you really have to squeeze on them. And if you're someone that doesn't have the strongest grip, then you're really going to struggle to get the bike to stop, especially if you had to do an emergency stop. And I'm going to call that a safety item as well. So if they were to come out with a V2 of this bike, I would say software tuning and larger brake rotors. And even the 24-inch could benefit from 203 rotors. Just make 203 the standard. And man, they would really have themselves a good package. Brake rotors aren't going to cost them hardly anything at all to go from a 180 to 203. And software tuning is just software tuning. That That's just doing a little extra programming. So it would be super easy for them. You can hear she's still in dual motor, pulling pretty hard. But yeah, fix those two things and they would have themselves a really killer bike. You can see PAS1, this is all the speed I get on this bike, which is perfect for riding around here. All right, well, she's dirty, but that's it. Time to go get some donuts.